It's a little unnerving to actually kind of speak after so many eminent nephrologists have already kind of presented and spoken. Uh, if I have permission of the chair, can I move forward with my slides?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. So this sir invited me for this talk because he chaired a session, or rather, we shared a session which was meant for dialysis technicians, wherein I presented a small demonstration of the kind of control life-threatening bleed from fistula, which may happen away from the home, away from the center at home. So coming to my case, this happened approximately 2 weeks ago on a Sunday evening when I was out with my family, actually, spending time with, in the evening with the kid. This was a 72-year-old female with a past medical history of coronary artery disease, hypertension, end-stage kidney disease, with on dialysis since last 8 years using the same fistula. She came to the emergency department with bleeding from fistula with towel which was soaked completely with blood. She had been seen by a vascular surgeon a month ago, and she was advised repair of AV fistula for a threatened aneurysmal dilatation. And there was a scab over the cannulation site at that point of time. However, she really could not afford any sort of surgery. We had referred her to a tertiary care center or government hospital. However, she went to another dialysis unit where the technician started using the same fistula. She came to us with a blood pressure of 64 systolic, heart rate of 130. She was tachypneic and was febrile. Multiple gauze bandages and compression attempts later, I received a very frantic call from a desperate RMO. Mind you, this was a small charitable institute. This was not a tertiary care center. This was not a big hospital. Urgent bedside BBG showed that the hemoglobin, which was a month ago 10 grams, had dropped down to 4 grams. I don't have the bleeding photograph, but she called me and I explained to her to get a bottle cap of either a Pepsi bottle or a Bisleri bottle, and she put it on the site of the bleeding. This is where the cap was, and she put a tight bandage around it. Urgent vascular surgery opinion was taken, and because it was Sunday evening, a charitable unit, the anesthetist could not be arranged. It was going to take at least 4 to 6 hours for the vascular surgery to come. However, he did share a video of this when, after he took the patient on the table. This bottle cap had controlled the bleeding, which could not have been controlled otherwise, and it had formed a decent clot which was plugging the side of the bleed. When So this plug, which later on, once he started operating, he told me that there was almost a 1.5 centimeter rent in the tissue, and no amount of pressure would have controlled that kind of bleeding. And that bottle cap had actually kind of helped us buy some time till the vascular surgery came. These are a few other videos from other vascular surgeons and nephrologists all across the world, presented here with their permission. This is from a vascular surgeon in Tennessee. This is a Coca-Cola cap, Coke cap bottle that he has used to control a bleed. This was a 10-year-old fistula. The patient was on warfarin, and the scab actually kind of came off and it sprayed the office. And he put a cap on the side of bleeder and put a tape over this.
Oh.
See how well it has been controlled. The clot has formed and it has caused a tamponade effect on the bleeding fistula. The same patient with the another video or another angle. So another video of a similar use of bottle cap, wherein it kind of controlled the bleeding by forming a well-defined clot, which provided a tamponade effect. So there have been several anecdotal reports all over the world. However, there is no scientific literature. I actually put this out on Twitter to crowdsource some scientific literature, but I could not, nobody had come up with any publications as such. So whatever data we have till now is anecdotal. And it actually comes out from a recommendation that was given by the British Renal Society. So what happened to our patient afterwards? The bleeding was kept controlled for 5 hours. The hemodynamics were controlled. She was transfused 2 units of Paxils. The rent in the fistula was repaired and the access was salvaged. quite often what happens in these difficult to control bleeds is that the pressure which is applied on the fistula is so great that the fistula gets compromised. The thrill is obliterated. There is a clot that forms, and we lose. The patient was discharged 48 hours later with a temporary catheter, and a month later, So how does it work? The bottle cap acts as a reservoir for the for the blood to accumulate into, and the blood clots within the cap. This creates a tamponade effect, which doesn't kill the fistula like an overdone pressure dressing. How much pressure to apply? Just enough to stop it from bleeding around the edges of the bottle cap. Once the bleeding is controlled, apply the tape and immediately ask the patient to come back to the hospital or the emergency department. It is an effective stopgap, and once bleeding stops, the fistula is then evaluated in a controlled setting. It is not a definitive treatment method. It is more of a first aid maneuver to kind of allow the patient to at least reach the hospital. It is meant to be used for bleeds that do not resolve with normal pressure applied to the bleeding site. It is not a substitute to vigilance. In my opinion, a life-threatening fistula bleed is more of a missed opportunity to treat a chronic complication rather than an acute emergency in itself. So yet putting a lid is a simple, easily available, zero cost, no R&D needed, and it doesn't kill the fistula. So this was actually the main purpose of the talk, but I would briefly cover some points on life-threatening bleeds from a fistula. The fatalities are actually quite rare. Just about 0.4% to 1.5% deaths are attributable to fatal vascular access hemorrhages. But what is more important is 75% of these hemorrhages occur while the patient is away from the unit or the hospital. Hence, it's very difficult for these bleeds to be controlled. They usually don't happen in a controlled setting. It's not a very common cause of death, but definitely a preventable one with some awareness and implementation of first aid techniques. Usual protocol after needle removal. We stop heparin 1 hour before termination. We remove the angle at the same angle of insertion. We do not compress while the needle is still in. And once the needle is completely removed, we use the 2-digit technique to achieve hemostasis. 1 digit compresses the site of the venotomy and the other digit puts pressure over the skin. And we keep checking the thrill, ensuring that the thrill is not obliterated. We press for at least 10 minutes without releasing the pressure, and we dispose of the needle following all safety precautions. And compression dressing is usually given for 2 to 3 hours. It's a common problem that is seen in the dialysis unit. It usually presents as a punctate bleed over the fistula. Can either be a slow oozing bleed or can be a severe spurting one like we just saw in the previous video. There are variable definitions, but most often, if a bleeding doesn't stop in 20 minutes, it is termed as prolonged bleeding from the fistula. It's not heparin that is always to be blamed. Patients are usually on antiplatelet agents. There is a lot of systemic, occasionally patients may be on warfarin or NOACs for atrial fibrillation, and uremic and coagulopathy kind of contributes to the prolonged bleeding that may occur occasionally. More importantly, it's fistulas, the things which can help us prevent a fatal bleed would be to rule out fistula stenosis, to evaluate for high flow fistulas, aneurysms, and needling skin site changes, and if there are improper needling techniques. So short-term control would involve applying direct pressure over the site of bleeding for 5 to 10 minutes and then observing for 1 to 2 hours. The pressure is to be applied over a narrow area. The arm should be elevated above the head and to control the blood pressure if possible. And however, pressure over a wide area using a wide bandage or a dressing is probably not going to control it, and this is something which is not recommended. In a difficult to control bleed, coagulopathy may be corrected by giving protamine. However, this has to be done in a controlled setting. The approximate dose is 1 milligrams for every 100 units. And if the heparin dose is unsure of, then we can give 10 to 20 milligrams of protamine. Risk of hypotension and anaphylaxis is always there, so that's why we should do it in a controlled environment. DDAVP usually not available in an injectable format, not used routinely. The other means include topical thrombin, gel foam, quick clot, a purse string suture, or a figure of 8 stitch. There are a lot of newer devices and R&Ds which are happening. NephroKit, the company, has come up with a bandage called as Iris bandage, which is a transparent bandage which can be applied over the punctate site of bleed. This is controlled routine bleeds, and it helps us apply pressure under vision rather than over the gauze bandage, wherein you have to keep checking whether the bleed has stopped or not. And when compared head to head, they've shown that approximately 80% of the bleeding was controlled within 3 minutes with this dressing. not commonly available in our country yet. Fistula clamp is another device which is used. However, this is controversial. Some say that it is associated with a lot of fistula thrombotic events, and again, not available in our country. This is another product from the company Nephrokit, which is called as Mosaic device. It's it's a perforated gel foam wherein the which is applied over the site of cannulation. The channel of the blood gets divided into these pores, which reduces the velocity of bleed, and this acts as a scaffold for a clot to be formed and helps in controlling post-dialysis bleeding. So how do we, it's more important to prevent it from happening next time. So it's not, what we do is, again, not to blame heparin, but we should ensure that the dose should be adjusted per clinical status of the patient. We stop it 1 hour before termination. We control the blood pressure and we look for risk factors. So coming to fistula stenosis, it's like a high pressure system which is just about to give way, and we are pricking this high pressure system every time. So obviously the bleeding will be prolonged and will be of high pressure, and this is something which is actually a warning sign or telltale sign for suspecting fistula stenosis. So when do we suspect it? When the quality of dialysis is compromised, a stable patient has rising creatinine without having a good appetite, phosphorus is going up, potassium is going up, the circuit is clotting more than 2 to 3 times a month, problems in needling, prolonged bleeding after the fistula, needle is removed. If the blood skirts out immediately after cannulation, there is pain, during dialysis downstream, if there is increased venous pressure alarms, and if there is a change in thrill in the fistula or the graft, and a persistently swollen extremity due to increased, diversion of blood from in the collateral veins. A simple bedside examination of a fistula by just asking the patient to raise it over the head can, pick up a fistula stenosis very early and easily. If the vein doesn't collapse, it would, you need to kind of refer this patient for a duplex scan and look out for, any possible fistula stenosis. Bedside evaluation by just palpating across, along the vein moving from proximal to distal. If the nature of the pulsatility kind of dies out, if the fistula is hyperpulsatile, not soft, not compressible, you would suspect it. As soon as you cross the area of stenosis, you would feel a dampening of the pulsations. Aneurysms are another risk factors of bleeding, and they occur because of repeated cannulating at the same site, which is the site is replaced by scar tissue every time. It is a devitalized tissue, ischemic tissue, which ultimately thins out and gives it becomes a risk factor for rupture and bleeding. And when do these aneurysms and pseudoaneurysms require intervention? So if the skin over is hypopigmented, we can usually observe this without urgent referral. If the skin is shiny and if there is a narrow dilatation of the fistula, we usually would refer to a vascular surgery sooner. If there is definite ulcerations or raw areas over the aneurysm, I would advise the technicians to not cannulate this and would urgently refer to the vascular surgeon. If the patient has fever and if there is active signs of infection, this has to be referred to the vascular surgeon as soon as possible. It should be started on broad spectrum antibiotics, and this fistula should not be used. We should actually get a temporary HT catheter to kind of at least correct this or treat this infection before attempting recannulation. What is important is, as early career nephrologists, and it's important for us to round the dialysis unit and be on watch for fistula complications. And it's important for us to teach our technicians. This is a chart or a pre-needling proforma that has been recommended by the British Renal Society and the Vascular Access Society of Britain and Ireland. It's something which is very simple. It's looking quite exhaustive, but it's very simple. If there are no scabs, if there is no pain, no necrosed areas, no aneurysms, no erythema, normal thrill, no hardness, there is no action needed. This is a normal fistula. If the fistula is gradually increasing in size, the skin is thin but not shiny, you will have to probably monitor this, take a photograph of this fistula and keep checking or documenting the size of the aneurysm. If there is pain or discomfort, if the size is increasing, if there is a new aneurysm, if there is a thin and shiny skin around the fistula needling site, if there is whistling bruit on the auscultation, if the fistula feels hard, and if there is erythema anywhere, refer this vascular access team, avoid cannulation, and consider monitor this. Refer for a duplex scan. Lift the arm above to assess whether there is whether the fistula is draining or not. and refer this to a vascular team definitely. If there is pain, if there is fever, if there is a necrosed area, if it's a rapidly enlarging fistula, if there is oozing pus, if the needling segments are hard on palpation, do not cannulate. Refer them to the emergency department, to the vascular team immediately. So to bring this out in a pictorial format, this is stage 0, fistula with a normal size and skin. This is stage 1, enlarging fistula, which with normal skin would just require monitoring. This is stage 2, enlarging fistula with shiny devitalized skin over the fistula cannulation sites. Refer to a vascular access team. Do not use this fistula which has which has an infected ulcer and which is rapidly enlarging.
Thank you.
So just it's important. This keyring, put a lid keyring campaign actually was brought out by Kidney Care UK. This was after few events of life-threatening bleeds were reported, and they came up with these keychain rings, which were distributed to dialysis units and to the patients, and they were educated about the use of this ring to control fatal dialysis bleed. And this is something which can be brought, can be adopted in our country as well. Something which is very simple but readily available. So the take-home points are, vigilance is the key to success. Life-threatening bleed from a fistula is definitely an emergency, but it is more of a misdiagnosis of a chronic problem. And it's something which, it's difficult to kind of put blame to anybody because of the sheer numbers and the short-staffed, hospitals of our country. But it's something which can, improve with educating the patient himself, optimizing heparin dosage and, forming protocols and of assessment of fistulas pre-needling, reviewing systemic risk factors and ensuring proper technique will enable us to prevent from life-threatening bleeds. And putting a lead campaign can actually be a lifesaver. I would like to acknowledge the picture and video credits from a lot of my virtual friends, from whom I requested for to present the videos and images of this forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Akash. Actually, I was a speaker, to follow Akash in one of the meetings. And when I saw this, I was amazed, and I was rather feeling shy that in 20, 30 years of my nephrology practice, I never thought of this simple idea. See, now and then people will come out to the devices and costly things to, intervene in such situation. But a simple Coke cap to do the trick. So I immediately thought I should be telling others. But I also had a feeling that people might already know, because I am sitting in a corner of the country and maybe I missed this news. But when I talked to some of the colleagues, they didn't know. So that's the reason this was brought here and open for comments and questions.